Apologies once again. Hi Lionel, how you doing, bro? Apologies once again for the delay. I know I'm 12 minutes late. I had a meeting that ran over time, and I'm just setting this up now. I'm gonna get myself some water. Let's get myself some water. So you can hear me. Okay, so Instagram video is fine. Lionel, can you hear me? Can everyone on Facebook hear me? If you can hear me, just say you can hear me so I can get going. Great, thumbs up. Cool. I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Apologies once again, had a meeting, hence why I'm starting pretty late. Cool, thanks. Great. So yeah, it's just been a meeting in the office. It's been a great one. Hey brother Jay, how you doing, man? Mr. J Star, Mr. Abraham. I hope you enjoyed the video last time round. For those that are online, for those that are listening in from Facebook, please remember that if you missed out on part one, I've shared a link on my Facebook page and you should be able to see that, the link on my Facebook page. I'm going to be talking about the topic again on broken men. Broken men, this is part 2. In part one I spoke on a few different things. I spoke on I started part 1 started with some information about myself, my upbringing, my own experiences of growing up in a fatherless home, growing up with a single mother, growing up with family, and also growing up in Southeast London, and how growing up in Southeast London also played a part in my mentality, in shaping my worldview, in shaping the way I think, the way I act, and also how that play a part in my scope of what it meant to be a man, so on and so forth. What else? I also kind of spoke about family upbringings and how that plays a part in it, and some of you guys shared some questions on that. You shared some questions about with me on what my take was on broken men, how we can deal with it, how we can change it, how we can navigate through it, and how we can be better people and better men in our society, and also how women can help out with better men. With that, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you guys that tuned in last week Wednesday. I know it was quite late when you guys tuned in, so I want to say a big thank you for you guys tuning in, because I had a lot of feedback from so many people, from mothers to men and so forth. Bear with me, someone's at my door. Imposter, forgive me. As you see, I'm still in the office, still operating, and the team behind me are still working behind me, so forgive me if you hear any noise in my office. Just had to look behind me to make sure someone wasn't trying to come and kidnap me. But also another few things that we was also sharing in that just a reminder that sometimes I will be looking up, because I've taken some notes to make sure that I don't forget anything on the topic on broken men for part 2, and hopefully this should be the last one going forward. Hopefully this should be the last one going forward. Sorry about that, one of the crazy team members in the office is trying to be silly behind me. But this should be the last one going forward, unless we do a part 3. But I'll be hoping to kind of discuss other topics going forward that you guys will pitch towards me, that you think is needed, or you're curious about, or you think it's just good for all of us to have a dialogue about. I'm going to spend over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to spend majority of the next 30 minutes or so talking about some of the things I've seen in Broken Men Part 2, and I'm going to be coming from 3 areas. The 3 areas I'm going to be talking about is parenting. What have I written it down? I've written it down as 3 major focuses of I'm going to be talking about is parents, partners, peers, and the person. That's parents, partners, peers, and the person. So parents, I wanted just to kind of start from parents. And before I wanted to go into that, a few things I did speak of last time round was that if there's a few things that men fear, or that try to get the better of men, or that men kind of fear, is 1, being in control. And men tend to not really like being controlled, and because they don't like being controlled, they then tend to seek control in various forms. That might be control by the pursuit of power, control by the pursuit of, which I kind of think even stems into an extreme level of looking at things like domestic violence. The verbal words men even use, if you hear female victims of domestic violence, the words that they hear men share about them, and the dangers of that kind of occur. You see men always trying to say you're worth nothing, or you're this, that, and the other. And I think that kind of comes from being controlling in that sense. Another thing in terms of always kind of seeking control as a man, because we're always trying to seek control, some of the things that may happen is that we dwindle into kind of moving into areas of, I dare say, what could that be? Making sure that we have all the money in the world underneath the sun in order to make sure that we have everything. We also work into the field of always trying to a pursuit of power, that we can get almost power in so many areas of our life. And I'm just recapping from the last video, and as we begin to kind of seek those things, those are the things that kind of disturb us, and those are the things that kind of, I would say, kind of aid towards this quote unquote broken men, which can be a quite subtle underlying thing that happens in a man's mind, in a man's life, in a man's upbringing, and distorts that. Another thing that might also aid that, just recapping again, is what I'll call feeling inadequate. Sometimes if a person feels inadequate in their life, if a person feels inadequate in their being and in their upbringing, sometimes what they may do, they may try to pursue certain things, or they may try to run from certain things. They run from responsibility, hence why we see sometimes a high volume of fathers being absent in the household. They run from being accountable to people and so forth. But once again, I would advise that you guys look on the first video, which is about 50 minutes long to an hour long, on Broken Men Part 1. But you guys requested a Part 2, so here I am sharing Part 2. So as I said again, I'm going to be, for those that are just joining in, I'm going to be focusing on 4 key areas: parents, partners, peers, and the person, which is the individual. So talking about parents, also, I just wanted to kind of share a few things on parents. A few things I wanted to kind of talk about in Part 2 is also looking at more of the solutions. In Part 1, we spoke of my views, my upbringing, my scope, my filters, and what I've seen, as well as the things I believe I know. Please also be aware that some of the things I share with you could be subject to change on the basis of people I have a dialogue with, growth, more reading, more study, and just life in general. So nothing I say here is gospel, is final. It's just my current belief system, what I believe I've seen, and also many conversations I've had with married folks, divorced folks, my mentees, friends, and family members. So just kind of stemming from parents, just looking at the solutions and some of the things that parents do. And I'm going to try and time myself because I know we haven't got a lot of time. One of the things I wrote down here is that I believe words are powerful. Words are truly, truly powerful. I touched on an example of DJ Khaled, on how he speaks to his son, and some of the words, that the affirmations and the words he shares with his son, even though his son doesn't understand it. Emotion is porous, energy is porous, and he shares key words with his son that I think it helps his son build the kind of mindset and the energy and feel the love that his father wants to give to him. So I'm always trying to encourage that, you know what, words are porous. Energy is porous, and we have to be careful of the words that are used. Myself, coming predominantly from an African household, words can be quite strong, and sometimes parents can say words that they may not mean to some degree, but they just say because that's all they understand, or that's their filters and that's their upbringing. Sometimes a parent, you might do something silly, and a parent that straight away says, "Why did you do that? That's very stupid of you. Are you stupid?" And straight away they say it, they ask you in a question format. And remember, I come from a West African background, and I think sometimes as parents, they need to be conscious of the words that they use. They need to be very conscious of the words that they use towards their children, because you'd be surprised how children adopt that, and then they go into schools, then the teacher says that, and then they reaffirm those words that have been used towards them. And I'm not saying that we can't use words of correction, but I think we need to be careful of the words that we use, predominantly negative words, when we're speaking to our children. I think it's very, very important to make sure that we speak words of affirmation, speak words of truth, speak words of edification to our children. Otherwise, we never know how the small words that we start them with, how it begins to fester, and what that becomes of them going forward. A few other things here I've written down as well, and this is not in any particular order, but staying on the topic of parents and parenting. Within the broken man, and understanding that I think some parents are, at times I dare say, scared to say sorry. I've also learned I think sometimes a parent feels that in the position that they hold, that, you know what, saying sorry is not part of the vocabulary that they should adopt. And I think it's very, very, very important that, you know what, if a parent wants to see their children and their men who would one day be fathers and husbands one day, being able to model that in their households, they need to be able to also show us as young people, show their children how to model that behavior. You know, we've heard the quote before that, you know what, children do as you do rather than as you say. So it's very, very important for parents to model the behavior that they want their children to do. So I just truly encourage and I implore parents out there, you know, model that behavior. I think there's this misconception amongst parents that, you know what, which kind of goes back into that field of power or misused power or a skewed view of what power is, that, you know what, if I make a mistake and I say sorry to my child, maybe I lose that position of authority, or I lose that relationship of me being the elder and me being their parent and them being my child. So again, once again, I just implore parents just to kind of hold on to that scope of being able just to apologize, but also explaining, if you've made a mistake, you know, I'm sorry, daddy made this mistake, and in dad making this mistake, this is probably what it's caused. So feel free, be open, have that relationship where you are a mother or you are a father, but you're able to go to your child and apologize, but also explain why. Because I think in us doing that, and as you model that, you're able to kind of create and cultivate the characteristics that also those children can adopt. They now begin to understand the art of responsibility, the art of accountability, and also walking in that and living out that out in their characters and in their behaviors. A few other things I've written here is that I think I said this earlier. Oh no, this is another one that I've heard quite a few times. Parents need to stop demonizing things, cultures, and countries from their own experiences. I'll give you an example. I was me and my good friend Matthew even touched on this just during the week when we were just recapping on Broken Men Part 1 after he watched the video. But we both realized a young man who we used to coach. And as we used to coach, we saw his mum, and his mum was just walking by. And me and the young man were just dialoguing and just talking about certain things. And I remember the young man just telling us he was in a relationship. And we asked her, how's the relationship now? He's like, oh, I'm not with the girl no more. And what happened, his mum just came by and his mum said, oh yeah, all girls are poison. I was stunned, and I remember just looking at the mum, but it was the wrong place at the wrong time to go into a long, deep dialogue about that. But straight away she said, no, all girls are poison. All girls are poison. And you can imagine her teenage son just coming out from a relationship, whether we think he's of age to be in a relationship or not. I think looking at the mum and her background and where she's come from, whether it's her experience, and it's funny enough, I actually wanted to have a dialogue with his mum a bit longer because we was in a neighbouring community and there were some other people that were her neighbours. And then she just wanted to tell me, I don't speak to that girl. I'm like, why? She just started telling me stories about what some of her neighbours have done to other people in the environment. And I began to see that, you know what, maybe this is the lens that she looks through. Maybe she has a trust issue with other females. But I believe that could be very, very, very dangerous if we start adopting things from our own lifestyles and our own filters to say that, you know what, no, these countries are bad, or you know what, don't date people from so and so country, or no, we don't speak to people from this land because this is who they are, and or this is, all these people are the same. And I think it's a very, very dangerous scope to have. And that's another thing I just implore for parents just to be mindful of and be conscious of, that you know what, as you're dealing with your children, as you're dealing with your young sons, be careful of what you say and what you demonize, and whether that be people, whether that be cultures, whether that even might be faith groups, and just try to come from an educational angle, which I think is very, very, very important in upbringing, because I'm just going, as I said again, we're just dealing with the parents side of things at the moment. Another thing that I've written here is that never stop being a friend to your child. Never ever stop being a friend to your child. I think that is mightily, mightily important, because, sorry, people are just trying to call me on my phone. I think being a friend to your child, I've heard many parents at times say, you know, no, I'm the parent, we're not friends. And there may be truth to that in some households, but I think it's mightily important to build some form of relationship with your child. I think the moment you're able to build some form of rapport with your child, some of the things that your children do and the men do behind closed doors, they can open up to you. There's so many conversations that I've seen. I remember once upon a time I once shared that if my junior sister ever came home with a boyfriend, I'll be like, no, don't bring him home. How dare you come here? And I've now learned to adopt a different approach, that, you know what, if she ever said, oh, I'm dating so-and-so, I'll be like, yeah, bring him in. I would have set boundaries, and boundaries would be that in those conversations. And if you do bring somebody home, please, you don't go to your room. We stay in the living room, we stay in the kitchen. But also allow that person to come in, because I think when that person comes in, I can now begin to nitpick this sort of man or boy my sister is dating. And I think that's also important with parents. I remember growing up myself, my mum wasn't aware of any of the relationships I was in and whatsoever. And that also probably, in saying that, not having a safe haven or knowing a safe haven to kind of bring someone home, traditionally, like, no, you don't bring anyone home. That probably leads me to now adopting certain characteristic traits and delving into certain activities that I start hiding from the household and I start doing behind closed doors. And then your mum thinks and then she becomes oblivious to it. And then she sees you as an angel because you go to school, you come home, and she just thinks you're that perfect young man, not knowing that I'm doing so many things and behind closed doors away from her because she's pushed that away, and that's not something I bring to the household. So I think that's one thing there. Another few things I've kind of put underneath there. There's, again, me being a Christian myself, there's scriptures I also think that kind of relate to that. In the book of Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, it tells us don't provoke our children to anger. And this is quite an important one because even though this is a biblical principle, I think this, whether you're a person of faith or not, you can also relate to your own life. There are so many things that happen with our children that because of their past mistakes that they make, we hold it against them and then we say it to them. And that is also quite dangerous. They may make a mistake and we say, look at you, you're just like your dad. Or look at you, you're so dumb. Or why are you so silly? Why do you keep doing that? I think we need to find other words and ways to navigate of how to speak to our boys, our young men. Because if we don't navigate using the right words and the right terminology, what begins to happen, they can hold that against us. And we can provoke them to anger. And in that anger is what, in a sense, emotion without control. I think there's nothing wrong with being angry to some degree, but be angry within a form of control. And I think, you know what, we need to just try and have a form of control as we just kind of, I'm multitasking here, I'm reading some of the comments. Welcome. What I'm trying to say here, is that even if we are angry in some state, we should need to just try and have control for ourselves, but also not try and provoke our children to anger, especially at a young age where all the emotions are flying, and they're still getting to know themselves, they're still getting to know the environment, they're still getting to know their family, they're still getting to know the surroundings, and also the place that they commune with, the place that they go to school with. So I think it's very, very important that we don't provoke our children to anger, but more so we navigate in terms of communication and various types of language in order to kind of get about what we want them to understand. So parenting is very, very important here. Again, sharing with my brother and one of my friends, a good friend of mine who tuned in to the video last time round. Another thing that we said that was quite important in terms of, as we stay on the topic of parenting, is that some parents, I spoke on the topic, one of the solutions that parents could do is speak to the king in your men. Speak to the gift that's in them. Don't remind them of the flaws that they have, but have faith to remind them of the person that they can become. I spoke of myself of just being a very, very poor reader in school, and I think what was great is that my mum always encouraging me to read was quite vital, even though I was a slow reader or I stuttered while I read my books. It's just an important way just to encourage them, walk with them on the journey, support them on the journey rather than condemning them and speaking down to them. Because as I was speaking about speaking to the king in them, it's one thing to speak to the king and a young man, but it's also knowing, do you see that you're a queen yourself? I think as mothers, you still need to remind yourself of the value that you have as a mother, knowing that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, knowing that God has bestowed that child to you uniquely in order to cultivate that child, to grow that child and to make them something great and something purposeful in the future. So I think it's very, very, very important that, in order to speak to the king and that young man, also go back and just look upon your own life and remind yourself that you're a queen, and also remind yourself of your own flaws if you have those, but also trying to navigate through, maybe even if you feel that your young boys are of age, letting them know some of your own flaws and your own mistakes, but letting them know that your mistakes don't define you, but through those mistakes and through your flaws and through some of your mishaps, how you can use that past pain and turn it into purpose and walk on this pathway that you can move forward and just appreciate life and really just live out life for the greater good. So knowing that your past mistakes and your past flaws don't define you, but who you are is just something that you can take going forward. So that's just me kind of summarizing on the topic of parents. And I'm going to go into partners. But remember, as I said again, please leave your questions towards the end of this dialogue, and where we'll do an open Q&A, and I'll try and answer some of your questions to the best of my ability. But going into partners, again, some of you guys pitched some questions to me of how to navigate through this sphere of how do you deal with a guy, how do you deal with a man, how do you deal with a broken man, quote unquote, if you're in a relationship with them. And there's a few things, as I said, I've written down here. And I think one of the major things, as I truly believe, is set boundaries. Set boundaries, but also set objective dialogues and have a code of honor. So what I mean by set boundaries is that I remember me and my ex-girlfriend, one of the things that we always said and we always did is that we set out how to fight those rules. If we ever had an argument, and funny enough, in over 4.5 years, we only argued twice. But one of the major things is that we never shouted. I think if there's one thing I personally despise in a relationship is shouting. I think for me, I just switch off. One, mainly because I probably used to shout myself quite aggressively when I was in primary school and in secondary school. And as I began to grow, I realized it was just a bunch of noise. So one of the things I set out in my own personal relationship is that, no, shouting no. And there's going to be times it may happen, but you need to bring both of yourself back to the drawing board. Say, no, you remember, this is our code of honor. I always say set out the boundaries, have a code of honor with them of knowing how you begin to kind of set out that relationship. Because as you had that code of honor and as you set out those boundaries, it allows both parties to know that, you remember, before we got into this, this was our pact. This is what we agreed on. And as you both agree on that, understand that men are objective beings. We look at things from an objective standpoint, even if we don't want to hold on to that. We see things from a very logical view. So it's very good to hold us to objective standpoints. So one of the things there, have a code of honor. As I said, for me, one of my code of honor is that no shouting. In our relationship, if we're having a disagreement, or if you don't like something about me, tell me. Say that, can we set some time aside? I want to sit down and have this talk. And if someone says, no, I don't want to have a talk with you, set out why it's important to have the talk and the benefits of that talk. I'm a big believer in communication. And one of my quotes is that I think communication is the first key to success. Aim to apply it into your need and to every part of your life in every way, shape or form possible. I'm a big believer in communication. I think communication is what we do in prayer. Communication is what you need even when you're reading. Communication is what you need when you're speaking to your children. It's what you need when you're speaking to your partner. It's what you need when you're in the workplace. And I think the more we can communicate diligently and consistently, we set out a stronger paradigm and a shape or form of how to build a coherent relationship. I remember last year, August, 4 friends of mine, one of them abroad, was just telling me about potential divorce that they were going through. And as I began to speak to them on some of the divorces that had planned, and thanks be to God, 2 of them, the divorce papers have been ripped up. But one of the things that they were speaking about when I spoke with them is that I began to realize there's a breakdown in communication. And sometimes with us men, with us in our broken state, we can try and find ways how to internalize certain things, keep our emotions to ourselves, not want to dialogue with certain things. One, we feel that the moment we dialogue it with you, we may be emasculated, or we dialogue it with you, or you may see us less of a man. So I think one of the other pointers in partners is just making sure that you have that kind of safe space, letting them know that whatever you share with me, I don't hold it against you, but with you, I'll hold your hand to navigate through it in order to be better, so we can be better in our relationship. Many people always use the term of falling in love, but I'm not in agreement with such terms of falling in love. I'm also in agreement of walking in love. I think love is an emotion, but I feel love is an act of a will accompanied by emotion and not led by it. I feel the moment you know that you are able to hold hands with someone and walk in love and share life, share your insecurities and share your thoughts and feelings and your fears, you're able to kind of trust one another and also navigate and understand what someone is going through beforehand. I think this allows you to bring scope to someone that has had past brokenness, and also you're not left with surprises. I've had so many people that have shared with me in the past of when they got married, some of the things, some of the worms that came out of the can from that their partner shared with them, and if they probably knew beforehand, they may have questioned whether to say I do, or to even agree to even being engaged to such a person. So I think it's important just to let that person know that this is a safe space. I'm fully aware that some people may share stuff with you that you probably would have said, boy, that's a no-go, I wouldn't even date them. And maybe that might be for your good. And maybe sometimes, if that is for your good, that might probably create, you to be able to guard your heart, because some men are in certain places that in their brokenness they use relationships as an escapism. So I think it's very, very, very important to know that, you know what, build a safe space, build communication with such people to know that, and also let them know your boundaries. Also let them know your thoughts, your feelings, and your fears, because I think the moment we're able to kind of outline these things, we're able to move forward coherently in a relationship. A few other things that I've written here, as I said again, bear with me, is keep things objective. You'll be very, very, very surprised how so many people in their relationship, they dwell within the subjectivity of things, such as, oh, but we get on in this, we get on in those things, and I love this about them. But then are you holding to the objective things that you know that you need? These are things that you want and that you desire, but understand the things that you need. Also, if you're in a relationship with, quote unquote, a broken man, you have two choices: to walk hand in hand with them, to navigate them through the trenches of their brokenness, and let them know that, you know what, I'm going to be with you by your side, not behind you, but by your side, because men can mentally put you behind them. And what I mean behind them, not necessarily because they dislike you, but because sometimes for them to face you and sharing those fears and those insecurities might be a massive challenge for them. So they like to kind of put the things behind you and just hide things away from you. And I think it's vital that you can walk with them hand in hand and letting them know that this is a safe space, that we can have this dialogue and we can have these conversations. And I'm willing to navigate and do life with you to know more about you. I think the moment we're able to do that, for those that are in relationships, the moment you actually be able to kind of say, create a sound relationship, respect one another, but truly, 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 truly set out boundaries. Things that can complicate boundaries, even though I know it may not be culturally accepted in today's day and age, are things such as sex, things such as, I've had people literally have joint accounts. Now, we're having a joint account with someone that's you're not married to. Like, what are you doing? Like, just really, really set out certain boundaries. The reason why I use the topic of sex, because I remember reading a study that infatuation can last in the mind for up to 3 years. So love and infatuation can actually look the same, but they're two different things. And what is proof of that? Sometimes you may ask, I'm sure many of you guys have friends as well, that you've asked them, oh, what happened to you and so and so? And they're like, oh, you know what? I fell out of love with them. So where do we come to this ideology and these conclusions that I fell out of love with somebody? I think it might prove that maybe you was actually infatuated with them, but you deemed it as love, therefore you accepted them. And sometimes what happens is that even in sex, biologically, what can happen is that you become so entwined with such a person that you find it even hard to break it off with them, even though you know that is the right thing to do. So I'm always important that set out boundaries with such a person, because a guy can truly, truly use sex in order just to kind of keep that relationship there, but hide their brokenness, use the form of sexual performance and still hide their brokenness. They're not willing to be accountable, they're not willing to be responsible. And what happens is, if a child comes up, straight away the topic of, well, I don't want a child, I'm not ready for a child, you know what, get rid of it. I remember speaking with one of my mentees not too long ago, and she was just sharing with me just her abortion process. And that was very, very painful for her, and something she's still navigating through. And again, broken people hurt people. And if someone is broken and is hurt, they're likely to bring that openness, and it can really begin to affect the other party. So I'm very, very keen on people just setting boundaries out, and also letting know that, ask your partner who are they accountable to. I know people usually say don't spread your news or don't share what you're going through with somebody else, but if there is someone sound that you can have as a third mediator, whether that's a close friend, whether that's a leader, whether that's a family member, have that, because sometimes it's good to have that third person as a soundboard that can be able to kind of bridge common ground between you and your partner if need be, especially if they're going through difficult times. And sometimes as you're speaking to your partner, you'll realize, for those that are in relationships, I use the example of the alarm. When you have a morning alarm, there's times where your morning alarm can keep ringing and you don't hear it because you're so used to it. Your mind is numb to it. And sometimes having a third person that also understands what's going on in your relationship could be a soundboard, can also be a safe place for your partner to share with, and they may be able to take heed and listen to the information that they share, even though you as a person has probably said the exact same thing. So yeah, those are the things I've kind of wanted to share in partners. There's a few more, but I'm just kind of constant. I'm just conscious of time. And I really also want to go into Q&A with you guys, because I'm sure there's some more stuff I can learn from you guys as well. A few more things I've written here. One of the last things I've just kind of written here is this, in terms of partners. Speak to the good in them, speak to the king in them, speak to the good in them. Remind them of the things that they do well, because they're likely to kind of build on that. And it also helps them build the confidence in order to be able to go into the areas that they don't do things that are maybe they're not so great in, and they can challenge those areas, because the confidence in the areas that they are doing well in, they can now take that into those other areas. So speak to the prince in them, speak to the men in them, remind them of the things that they do well, because sometimes us men, as I say, we can compartmentalize certain things. Forgive me that I'm always stuttering. I haven't eaten. I've had long meetings in the office, so please forgive me for my stuttering today, ladies and gents, and I need some food. But yeah, just remind them of the good that they do, because as they begin to build that, and as they grow in that area of that confidence and their self-confidence in particular areas, they begin to filter into other areas, and they're likely to challenge that in some of our other areas of their lives in order to be better men and better leaders. And one of the other areas here, so we spoke about parenting, we spoke about partners, and now we're going to speak about peers. Excuse me. So in peers is probably one of the most important ones in this area here. And in peers, one of the major things I encourage all broken men to do. So if you're a man here, whether you... Oh, sorry, phone calls are coming in, and I don't know why people are calling me, because I've let these people not already know that I'm going to be doing a live video here. So forgive me for those that are listening on Instagram. A call just came in. If anyone has any techniques of how I can switch that off, please let me know, so I don't get more calls coming in at 9:43 at night. But one of the things I've said that's imperative and vital for a man to truly grow and to walk away and stem away from their past brokenness is to seek community. I think where you have unity, you have community. And when you have community, you can now create change. You can now create the environment where true change can take place. And we always heard the quote that, no man is an island. So it's vital that men, seek community. For myself, I seek community within my local church and in my brotherhood. Many times I'm always calling the brothers to come round, sit down, have chat, challenge each other on our worldviews, challenge each other on our lifestyles, challenge each other on how we're treating the women in our lives, if we're dating, if we're not dating. Just challenge each other to be better men and be better leaders. And in that safe haven of us challenging each other, even though sometimes as men we don't want to hurry in the midst of the moment, many of us, because we're in that environment, and if we remain in that environment on a consistent basis, a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, ultimately that can now begin to stem into our character. We often hear the quote that, if you can't stand heat, get out of the kitchen. But I dare say that, if the heat that you're feeling and you're facing is beneficial to you, you're likely to remain in that. So I challenge every man here, and whether you feel you're a broken man or not, stay in a place of community, stay in a place of unity, stay in a place of where that you're amongst the brotherhood, that you can challenge each other. There is a scripture that says bad crowd corrupts good habit. So it's also important to make sure that you stay in the environments and amongst the brotherhood of where you can be challenged to be better men, rather than indulging yourself in negative things. I remember once upon a time, I was amongst a circle. We used to challenge each other of how many girls we can sleep with. And that was a lifestyle I lived out. And we always just tried to compete and beat each other. Oh, did you get her? Like, yeah. And just imagine just being in that. It's still competitive, but it was competitive in a very negative direction. Whereas now, me and my brothers, we challenge ourselves for those that are struggling with abstinency. How are you finding it so far? And then we pray for one another, but we also share practical tips of how not to find ourselves in those failings and those mistakes. And I think that's vital. I truly implore my brothers out there, it's important to be transparent. It's difficult in today's day and age because sometimes you don't know who you can trust. And naturally, we try to find defense mechanisms and survival mechanisms. So we tend not to tell our brothers certain things in case that if we have a falling out, they may hold it against us. But I truly believe that it's vital that in this peer group and in the community of a brotherhood, it's important that we hold each other accountable. As silly as it is, there's times where me and my boys, they just said, I'm like, oh, what are we up to today? Like, I'm going to so-and-so's house. Whereas back in the days, our mentality, because we quote unquote wanted to sleep around, we wouldn't even tell each other where we're going, and we'll come back and just tell each other that, oh yeah, I was with so-and-so by the way, and this is what went down. But nowadays we just hold each other accountable, like, oh, I'm planning to go to so-and-so's house. Good idea, bad idea? Like, bruv, go home. It's a bad idea. Go home. Don't mess about. And we may hate to hear it, but it's just important that we just challenge each other in order to kind of grow. I don't believe we can go back and reverse the cycle, but I do believe we can retrace our past failings. We can retrace some of the stuff that we've done and the mistakes that we've made, and some of the areas of brokenness, whether it may be fatherlessness, whether it may be abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, verbal abuse. And as we retrace that, we can use that and bring it in a conversation and transform that in order to have greater growth with one another. So I truly, truly implore all of us and many of us to remain in that environment. I think once we're able to remain in that environment of accountability, we're able to teach one another, train one another, and ultimately create transformation for one another. And men can come away from that brokenness and can be made whole for the greater good. This also leads me to saying that I believe in a generation that we like to portray our best selves on social media. What is vitally and important in today's day and age is to be transparent, honest, and integral. I think the moment a man knows that these are basic principles of manhood, and he knows what the principles of manhood are, he can hold to that and walk in that. And even though he may feel uncomfortable with it in the early stages, it can create growth and long-term growth and sustainable growth in the long run. And these are ways that I think can help aid our healing in order for us to move forward. Funny enough, there's a scripture I love in the Bible from 1 Peter 4 verse 8 that it says, love each other with deeper love and brotherly kindness. And I think one of the things in today's day and age, nowadays brothers don't hug each other, they don't hold each other, they don't console each other. And I think it's vital that even when we see in sports, they hold each other. And why are teammates able to hold each other and even cry on the pitch? I remember sometimes my mom's like, why are these men crying? But I think they're able to express those emotions because they've spent life with one another, spent day in and day out on the training field, doing life with one another, hearing from what the coach says, challenge each other on their emotional basis. And I think it's important that us men, that reminding ourselves that no man is an island, and it's vitally important that we just stay in a place of community, that we're just able to really grow and just challenge each other to be better men, to challenge ourselves in our insecurities. Do we get outbursts of anger? Do we usually go into our shell? And just to put our arm around each other when we need to and say, you know what, we can do better. You know, I know what you're going through. You shared it with me. I'll be your confidant. I'm your Cody, but I'm willing to walk with you through this to say, you know, there's a better way of doing it. Again, going back to the art of communication, and where I believe communication is the first key to success. Aim to apply it to every area of your need. I think that is a vital thing that we need to do. There's this misconception about crying, and I shared this in the first video and I don't want to touch on it too much, but if there's one thing I've also learned is that society still told us that it's weak for men to cry. I remember hearing from Mr. Jason, who runs the Cave of Adullam, and that is Cave 313. Shout out to Jason, who's almost like I call as a distant mentor for me, and someone I just watch and I observe, and I see the great work he does with young men. He was sharing on if something gets in your eye, the tear ducts, the stuff that comes out is usually I think 80 to 90% water, but he was talking about when someone cries out of either grief or pain or whatever, I can't remember what it is, but it's not 90% water, it's something else that comes out which the body releases, and it's just a hormone that the body releases in order to feel relieved. And he was just talking about what happens to a man if he always conceals that, if he always keeps that in, where he's meant to have that emotional release and for this chemical to be released from his body. How that can aid him in actually being a better man. And this may also kind of see the comparison of why there's a high influx of men committing suicide, where men don't allow themselves to release. And I think it's important that in our brotherhood, in our conversations, know that you can console your brother and let him know it's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. Like, you crying doesn't make you less of a man. You crying doesn't mean that you're a weaker man. You crying doesn't mean that you're a coward. But in actually being able to cry and just share your thoughts and feelings, as I always say, once you cry it, let it out. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to wipe your eyes away and just get up and strategize and move forward. And I think crying, being able to release those emotions, is important for a man to grow. So there's this misconception that men shouldn't cry. I think it's a myth, because I think what true weakness is not the fact that you're crying. True weakness is not being able to have the courage to say what you're going through, what you're feeling, and where you feel you need help. I think true courage is being able to say, you know what, I need help, and I hold my hand up, and I just hope there's someone out there that can hold my hand while I need this help, you know, whatever it may be. Sometimes us men are scared to share our insecurities. We're scared to say that if we're broke, we're scared to actually go out and say, I need a job. Then we put out all these crazy pictures on social media to look like life is great. And in that, we don't share the reality of what's going on, and we still imploding, eating ourselves up inside. And I think it's mightily important to kind of share what we're going through. So I truly implore many guys out there just to share what you're going through and just to have this conversation. But don't laugh at your guys that cry. I've seen some of the strongest men shed a tear, trust me. And at first I'm like, oh, he's crying. But then those are the same men that are willing to go at the front line and be courageous in the face of fear, to be able to say, I'm willing to be a man now. They're also the men that are willing to say, I'm willing to be responsible if my partner becomes pregnant, or I'm not willing to run from the challenges of life. And I think that's mighty important. Where some of the guys that are like, no, I'm tough, I'm this guy, I'm never running, they're the guys that are likely to run. They hide behind the facade of social media. They hide behind the facade of who they think they are and what they've got on, rather than who they truly are. And as I said in the last video, true wealth is not what you have on you, but what you have within you, what you have within here. And true power is not all this money and the position that you hold, but is the love that you have in your heart, and the heart of servanthood that you're willing to share with others. So I think it's mightily important that we share love, that we share light with many people out there. I'm just going to kind of fly through. So I've spoken so far on parents. For those that have missed it, please feel free to recap this. I'll also try and save the video and put it out on YouTube. But so far I've spoken parents, I've spoken partners, and I've spoken peers, where it's important that to remember that no man is an island, and we need to stay in the community of brotherhood. I shared a quote once last week that it takes a village to raise a child, but then how much more so a man? And I think in that, it's mightily important that us men must stick together as brothers in arms, you know, linking arms and letting them know that, you know what, men in unison, nothing can break. Nothing can break. I've learned that if you learn the art of war, talking about physical war, one of the first things they try to cut off is communication. And the second thing they try to create is division, because the moment you can divide, you can truly conquer. So I think it's mightily important that us brothers stick together in brotherhood, and reach out to your brothers that you haven't heard from in a long time and find out what they're going through, because it's mightily important for us to do that in order to help them through what they're going through and help them navigate through the trenches of this world that could be truly challenging. Us men are leaders in our own right, and sometimes carrying the weight of leadership can be quite intense and could be quite burdensome. And not all the time, but many times I truly believe that a problem shared is a problem halved. And as you begin to share that load, once again, I said earlier, one of the reasons why I started this video late today, I had a mastermind meeting with some of my mentees and some of my friends and some people I invited to my office. And as much as many of them may come to me at times just to ask for my advice, most of the advice and the words of wisdom that came out was from each other, and they were able to feed one another through the things that they need in their business life, in their spiritual life, in their personal growth. So I think it's vital that men stick together and share their ideas and share their thoughts and share their failings and their feelings, and through that they can have a brother that can put their arm around their shoulder to say, I'm with you on this, and I'm willing to kind of help you through what you're going through. And the last thing I wanted to kind of go into is the individual, which is quite similar to the peers, which is one, men understand that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be a man. Seeking help is not weakness, but actually shows courage. Find activities. If you're ever feeling down, speak to your brother, but find activities, release those endorphins, you know, get that testosterone out, like really get active. One of the dangers, you realize that most people that actually do commit suicide usually do it in isolation, usually do it in their rooms or somewhere, usually probably try and hang themselves somewhere, but they rarely may try and commit suicide in the presence of people, or probably shout out, hey, I'm about to kill myself, because they know people will talk them out of it. And I think that's a sign. Men need to stay in a community and have these conversations around their brotherhood, because it's very dangerous to stay in isolation. There's a quote that says, the devil makes idle words. The devil makes, what's the quote? The devil make, I need to go and get some food, man. The devil makes work for idle hands. I believe that's the quote. But what the quote is trying to say, in a sense, is that the moment you are doing nothing, he will keep you in that place. he'll keep you in that place and he'll fill your mind with negative thoughts, with negative feelings, with negative emotions. So I think it's vital that we stay together in a community and have dialogue with one another. And a few other things I've written here is that we need to be, as men, in order to truly grow and heal ourselves from our past brokenness, is to learn to protect our eyes. And you'll be surprised how much some of the stuff we see on social media and also guarding our heart and some of the things that we hear that we think is just purely entertainment, but it goes into our subconscious and it begins to manifest and fester into our being. And that may distort ourselves in the partners we may choose, the choices that we may make. Rather than speaking to someone in peace and in meekness, we react in anger because we think dominating them shows power. But really and truly, it diminishes our quality and it diminishes our character. So I think it's vital for us to look at and just kind of be careful of some of the things that we say, guide our hearts, guide what we hear, guide what we see, but also trying, if possible, to respond to people with peace, in meekness and in power. Because the world deems meekness as weakness, but I believe in the sight of God, he sees it as magnificent. So I think it's truly, truly important that we try and walk in that. I remember one person used the quote that if there's two people across the road and they're both shouting, and one is shouting words of wisdom, but one is shouting foolishness, from afar they look like two stupid people or two foolish people. So it's vital that, we just be careful of the words that we use, and rather than listening to the shouting words that others may do, they may say to us, try and look past that and actually see what is really, really going on behind the scenes. So I think that's vital there. I think it's also important that, it's okay to be in touch with your emotions, but don't allow your emotions to dominate you. I think as men, sometimes we have outbursts of anger, or then we may recline and just be numb or just turn our back, or we don't want to hear it. But it's very, very, very important that, be in touch with your emotions, feel that pain, feel that fear, but don't allow fear to dominate you, and fight fear with faith, fight fear with love. And if you're still wrestling with how to kind of navigate through it, just share it with somebody else. I think that's vital. But I want to go into a time of Q&A. Again, forgive me for my stuttering, if I regurgitated certain things over and over. I literally haven't eaten, just been in meetings over and over. But please do fire away with some of the pointers that you guys may have, if you guys have any questions, because I think I've only got about 10 or so minutes, maybe 15, to do a Q&A with some people. And again, I'm also open to learn as well. So if you have any pointers that you think you can share, I know there's some pointers on my list here that I didn't get around to sharing fully. But I just wanted to make sure that there's enough time for Q&A. So if there's any questions that you guys have, please fire away. Go for it. No rush, one at a time. Thank you, Kathy. Thanks, Kathy, for that comment. I see you. And Laura as well. I see you, Joseph. I see you. Oh, Olivia, I see you. And my little man, Ari. And Lady D, I see you there. But yeah, do you guys have any questions at all? Anybody? Time's ticking. Remember, this is going to go online. So the longer you guys take to share your thoughts and questions, the more people that watch it online may be thinking, what is this? Okay, thank you. So here's a question here. The question goes, prior to dating a man, how can you separate a broken man from a whole man, i.e. communication? That's a very, very, very powerful and great question. Hopefully I've got enough time to kind of dive into that. But one of the major things that I've always learned is that if you usually ask somebody, tell me about yourself, they'll usually tell you about what they do. So sometimes men may define their character by their profession, but your profession is what you do. It's not necessarily who you are. And I think it's important for us to go deep and find out about a man. You'll be surprised how many people get into relationships. They don't know the person's age. They don't know the person's family. They don't know their family backgrounds. Ask them questions. What's your relationship like with your mom? Tell me a bit about your mom. What's your relationship like with your dad? I think these begin to kind of give you indicators of what someone's background is about, what they're going through. And then begin to also, I'm a big believer of, and people truly care about what you have to say when you show them that you care. So it's important to go into someone's world first. And as you begin to go into their world and go into all the, I quote unquote, objective boxes in their life, someone talks about the 5 key areas: faith, family, finance, friends, and fitness. Sometimes just tackling some of those key areas objectively, knowing the relationships with those key areas lets you know more about a person, and also seeing how they live that out. You truly can know a man by how he consistently lives out some of those 5 F's You can know a man by how he consistently lives out those 5 Fs, and that can give you indication of what they're going through, how they act, how they think, and so forth. And then from there, you can begin to set out your life. You can begin to set out some of the things you go through, your faith, your fears, your flaws. And in that, also letting them know some of the boundaries that you put in place. And for my female mentees, one of the things I always share with them a lot that's vitally important is that if a man cannot accept your word no, he's probably not the right man for you. So I remember one of my female mentees was just having a horrible time in relationships and always entertaining the bedroom with their partner. And I told him one time, I'm like, guys saying I want to come to your house, no, it's okay. Doesn't need to. If he's uncomfortable, if he's actually uncomfortable and always irate, like, why can't I come to your house? Let me come to your house. I always want to come to your house. I think, and he cannot accept the word no and respect your position of the word no. If he walks away, no, that's a blessing in disguise. Many people get upset, like, oh, my Daisy's walked away. What did I do wrong? Did I put the guard up too much? No, set your boundaries out, set your stall out. And that doesn't mean not letting them into your emotions of some of the things that you may wrestle with and your thoughts and your feelings and your ambitions. But set your stall out. Let them know that these are the boundaries that you set out for yourself. Some people set it out that, you know what, no phone calls at a particular time. And I know in today's day and age, they're like, no, man, we don't do that in today, 21st century. But for some people, that sets the stall out for them. And I think as you begin to set the stall out for you and your partner, you begin to see that if they're in it for the long run and they're able to respect those boundaries and also have conversations with you on it, or if they're more likely to say that, you know what, no, you're not dead you or forget you, you know what, I don't want this relationship, I want out of this relationship. So I think that's important. I can go on more, but I'm just conscious of the other questions. Another question here is, my son doesn't believe he's a leader. How do I motivate him? Fantastic. That's a fantastic question. One of the things I'm beginning to see, I remember going to watch it wasn't a Black Panther, I think it was Captain America. A Black Panther was in it. And as I was watching the Black Panther for the first time in my life, I felt motivated to see a black superhero. I was like, wow. So I think one of the things is share with him role models that may resemble him, from the leaders that there are, and the leaders in the movies, the leaders, there's the leaders of history, from the presidents of our time to the past leaders of our time to the people that the inventors. I think as you begin to model these things to even some of the entertainers and some of the sportsmen and women around the world, show them the leaders and let him do activities that challenge him to grow, that might be uncomfortable. I'm a big believer in physical activities, whether that is martial arts, boxing, football. Challenge himself, let him do certain things, give him positions of leadership, also give him positions of leadership in the household. Let him know that and credit him for certain things. I'm not necessarily a believer in pocket money, but I believe that you can pocket them with money for the things that they may do in the house. So let him know what it means to earn certain things. Teach him how to flip money. And what I mean by flip money, if you save this and this up, what can it do? Teach him financial education. And I think sometimes it's not always about just words of affirmation, which I think you should do on a regular basis when he goes to bed, when he wakes up in the morning, during the day, letting him know that his failings in school and the grades that he gets don't define him, but can he challenge himself? I think one of the key words I've always implored parents to use is the word try. Can you try and do this? Can you try and do that? So use those words to motivate him. And also let him celebrate small wins. I think it's vital. I'm a big believer in high fives. If you see me with your child or around children, I'm always giving them high fives. I think physically for a child to raise their hand up, it shows them that they're reaching higher. I think also giving high fives, let them know that they've done something good. Giving them a pat on the back. It seems childish, but they are children. And I think it's vital and it's important that, you know, we allow them to be children. We allow them to be free. And letting them know that their past mistakes don't define them. But also asking them questions like, you made that mistake, and what would you do differently? I hope that answers your question. But again, I don't want to go on for too long because I'm conscious that Instagram video is going to cut me off any time from now because of the time I've spent making this video. But yeah, speak to the king in him. Let him know what it means to be a mother. Let him know some of the challenges, but also what he's doing great. And let him know that, you know what, you're going to be a great husband one day. You're going to be a great leader one day. And let him know why he's going to be a great leader. Don't just say it. Or the way I saw you help that person across the road. And he said, please, ma'am, thank you, ma'am, that's great. Don't think chivalry is dead. Teach him the art of opening the door or waking mum up or saying good morning, mum, good night, mum. Let him know the importance of those things, because I think the moment you instill those characteristic traits and those qualities in a young man, he can carry on in long areas of his life. And also within, to some degree, he's probably able to pick the right woman in his own life because he's seen you model it. He's seen you model what it means to apologize and so forth. But so I thought that helps answer that question, and I don't want to ramble on for any longer because of time. Has anyone got any questions? Because I know we've got a few more minutes. And even pointers. Again, I'm also very, very open to learning. So if there's any pointers that you guys have, please do share those pointers. Because I think myself and some of the other listeners can learn from it. Is there any other questions or pointers? No, I'll give it a few more minutes because I know some people might be typing, and these live videos doesn't tell me if someone is typing or not. Is there any other pointers on Broken Men Part 2, or even any of the pointers I've raised today? Also be aware that there is an event taking place. I implore everybody, if you're a man, come down to the event on the 24th of September. The link is in my Instagram bio, and it's also all over my social media page on Facebook, which I've posted. It is the Mentality event, which has been organized by the fantastic visionary Eben, who's actually a female, and she's organized a fantastic event for men, about 250 men in one room with some great leaders, great minds, some entrepreneurs, some in the working world, just coming together to share nuggets and just to be transparent on all areas of their life, whether that be faith, relationships, business, people, entrepreneurism, and just growth. And I think it's a great time to come. So that's the Mentality event. The link is in my bio. Make your way down to that event if you're a man. If you're a woman watching this, please share that link with them. I think tickets are £10. Tickets are going fast, and that price is limited. So I implore you guys to tell those men. It's a Sunday night from around about 5:30. That's the Mentality event, and I'll be hosting that event personally, which is a great honor for me to host. And it's going to be a great event. So please share that. Thank you very much, KG, for letting me know about that. But yeah, we're going to probably sign out shortly. I'm going to ask again for the final round. Do you guys have any questions, any pointers, or any comments to make on the topic of broken men? And if you think there needs to be a part 3, and if you don't think there needs to be a part 3, also let me know what other topics you'd like me to kind of share on a Facebook Live. I might be doing another one next week, Wednesday, at 9 p.m. and I've got quite an interesting topic up my sleeve, which is mainly geared towards the women, but I think is also beneficial for the men to listen to. So Instagram has now told me I've got 1 minute 55 seconds and counting. But if you guys don't have any questions, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening in, and I'm just grateful, man. I'm grateful for the people that stayed up. I know you guys need to get to bed because some of you guys love your sleep and you need to be up nice and early. But yeah, as I said again, just recapping, we spoke on parenting and partners, peers, and the person. And I think that's vitally important in navigating through this world of broken men, of how to get through it. But also for some of you guys that feel that I might have missed some things out on the idea and the topic of broken men, listening to part 1. I think you can listen to it on the go. The link is also in YouTube. There's a video on YouTube which I saved from the last video. Listening to that, I think there's so many things I shared personally on my own journey, my own upbringings, from the filters of the way I see the world and how I kind of navigate through being a man myself. So thanks again for tuning in. God bless you guys. I hope this video was as good as the last one, if not better. And tune in for next week, Wednesday, when I'll be sharing another video on, I won't tell you what it is because you have to tune in to see that. Thank you very much, Steph, for tuning in. You guys are much welcome. Share the video to other people to come and watch it. I truly share these videos so that other people can be edified, and all of us as men can be leaders in our own right in order to change our community and our environment for the better, for the greater, and for the good. Hope you all have a great evening. And you can watch this video on my Instagram again and on my Facebook again. Good night. God bless. Emmanuel Dari Anthony signing out. Peace. How do I end it?